Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a prison system that it sounds completely insane. Imagine a place that gives convicted murderers the keys to their own cells. It's a real system, and it challenges pretty much everything we think we know about crime, punishment, and maybe even human nature itself. Okay, first, I want you to picture a certain group of people. We're talking about murderers, armed robbers, drug dealers. You get the idea. These aren't folks in for petty theft. So where do you imagine they live? I'm guessing you're thinking high walls, maybe some barbed wire, definitely some locked steel doors, right? But what if I told you they actually live here, on a stunningly beautiful island, a UNESCO World Heritage Site that gets about 1 million tourists every single year? And they're not locked up. They walk around, totally free, right alongside those tourists. They even take the public ferry to get to work. And yes, they have the keys to their own rooms. So, welcome to Suomenlinna, an open prison in Finland. And let's be clear about what open means. There are about 90 prisoners here, no guards, no uniforms, no chains. Their rooms, unlocked all day. And the main thing, kid fence, the kind a kid could hop over. This whole place runs on trust and consequences, not on concrete and steel. Okay, I know what you're thinking. This should not work. This sounds like a recipe for absolute disaster. But here's the crazy part. It does work. In fact, the data shows it works way, way better than the maximum security prisons we're all used to. So let's look at the paradox of the results. These are the numbers that just completely wreck our assumptions. All right, let's get into the hard data. Recidivism, that's just a fancy word for how often ex-prisoners commit another crime. Look at this. At a similar open prison in Norway, Bastøy, it's just 16% after 2 years. Now compare that to the US, a much more punitive system. There, a staggering 71% of prisoners are rearrested within 5 years. The numbers don't lie. These places that critics call holiday camps are actually way more effective at stopping future crime. It almost makes you wonder if traditional prisons are just expensive factories for creating more criminals. And if that wasn't enough, let's talk about money. This isn't just about being more effective, it's also a whole lot cheaper. You can see here in Finland, an open prison costs about 25% less per day than a traditional closed one. So it's not only better for society's safety, it's also way better for the taxpayer's wallet. And this is what that punitive model leads to. In the United States, for every 100,000 people, 541 of them are locked up. I mean, just think about that number. It's not just a statistic, it's a massive chunk of the population living behind bars. Now, look at Finland. 54. That is literally 10 times lower. And this isn't some cultural fluke. It's the direct result of a conscious decision to shift away from just punishing people and toward a system that's actually based on what works. And get this, it's not just Finland. The Netherlands has actually closed 23 prisons since 2014. Why? Because they're literally running out of criminals to put in them. It's not because they got tough on crime, it's because they got smart on rehabilitation. Okay, so how on earth does this actually work? How do you run a prison where people can just leave? Well, the answer isn't about blind trust or thinking everyone is inherently good. It's actually way more structured and pragmatic than you might think. It's about replacing chaos with radical clarity. The core logic is actually super simple. 1, the rules are crystal clear. 2, the reward for following them is real, tangible freedom that you experience every single day. And 3, the punishment for messing up is immediate and certain. You go straight back to a locked, high-security prison. Suddenly, the most rational thing to do is also the right thing to do. So what's a typical day like? Well, it's surprisingly normal. These guys work a full day, 6 to 8 hours, doing things like masonry or farming. They earn a real wage. They have to cook their own food, do their own laundry. They even have phones and internet. This isn't about making life easy for them. It's the exact opposite. It's forcing them to be responsible adults, practicing the skills they're going to need on the outside. And this quote from a prison director really gets to the heart of it. We are not on the prisoner's side. We are on society's side. See, this system isn't about being nice to prisoners. It's about one thing and one thing only: making society safer by making sure that when these people get out, they don't create any more victims. Which brings us to the really tough question here. Is this justice, or is it just pragmatism? It's a brutal calculation about preventing future harm. And this is the question that's probably been on your mind this whole time.
what about the victims? How is this justice? I mean, let's be honest, it's the elephant in the room. If someone took a loved one from you and now they're living on a beautiful island, earning a wage, that sounds incredibly unfair. And that anger, that feeling of injustice, is completely 100% valid.
The system's answer is pragmatic. It understands that no amount of suffering is going to undo the harm. This quote from a victim's mother says it all. Making his killer suffer won't bring my boy back. But maybe preventing him from creating another mother like me, that would mean something. And that's the goal. Focus on what you can change, which is the future. So really, it boils down to this choice. Do you design a system to satisfy our very real, very human need for revenge? Or do you design a system to create fewer future victims? Finland made a deliberate choice. They chose pragmatism over punishment. Because here's a fact we can't ignore. 95% of all prisoners eventually get released. They are going to be our neighbors. So the real question isn't if they get out, but who gets out. Do we want the person living next door to be someone who's been dehumanized and brutalized for years? Or do we want them to be someone who has been taught how to be a productive member of society?
Okay, and this leads us to a really uncomfortable truth, because what this all reveals isn't just about prisoners, it's about all of us.
There's this idea of emergent systems. Basically, the environment you create determines the behavior you get. So if you treat people like dangerous animals, guess what? They start to see themselves that way. But if you give them responsibility, you're sending a completely different message. You're saying, look, you're a person who made horrible choices. Now it's time to prove you can make better ones. So this is where it gets really interesting, because it stops being about prisons. If treating convicted criminals with trust and responsibility makes them less likely to reoffend, then what other basic assumptions are we getting totally, catastrophically wrong about human nature? I mean, think about how many of our systems, our schools, our workplaces are built on the idea that people need to be controlled and threatened with punishment to do the right thing. What if that's just not true? So what does that say about every cage we build? Those 90 men on that island, they're not just a fluke. They're proof of a pretty profound idea that if you create the right conditions for people to succeed, conditions with clarity, with dignity, and with real responsibility, most of them actually will. And that makes you wonder about all the other cages we build, not just the ones with bars, but the ones we build for each other and for ourselves.